Hello everyone and welcome back to AmmoMart.com. I'm Rodney Phillips and I hope that you enjoyed our little turkey hunt in the beginning of our video. However, as everybody knows, hunting turkeys are not that simple at all. In fact, a lot of people would claim if they could smell, they would be unhuntable. Trust me, that wasn't really how turkey hunting works. And as you can tell, I've wore my Puritan best today in the spirit of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's always been one of my favorite holidays because of its historical significance. In the spirit of all that, what I'd like to do later on is show you some of the period weapons that our pilgrims were forced to use, because that's all of they had, and show you how difficult it can be not only to defend yourself, but actually provide food, because weapons back then were equally protector and provider. Let's roll the clock back to about 1620 and talk about those pilgrims. First off is a man named John Alden, who began his life in England as a cooper, which is a barrel maker, for those that didn't know that, on the docks. And he was talked into going on to the expedition and probably didn't have any intention of doing it much before he left. In fact, what we know is he didn't actually accompany the Pilgrims when they went to Holland as separatists. They came back, they rented the boat, the Mayflower, of course, to take them across the pond, and for whatever reason, Alden went with. Many things in Alden's life make him a significant historical figure, but the first one of which was he was the first member of the Mayflower to actually set foot in North America. He, along with 29 other members, were selected to go recon the area shortly after the boat made anchor. Greatly appreciated by historians is the fact that the weapon that he took is still in existence today. It was called a wheel-lock carbine and is now referred to as the Mayflower Gun. It's on display right now at the NRA Museum in Fairfax, Virginia, so if you can get by that area and you have time to stop, you should, or you can also look it up online. The gun is probably made by Beretta, but it's certainly Italian. It's not exactly been determined that it's Beretta, but that's the common feeling. The wheel lock functioned on black powder, and what made the gun actually fire was a very complicated sort of lock mechanism that ended up working pretty much like a Zippo lighter. You had a lot of friction against metal and metal, and it ignited the charge. That design replaced the matchlock, a system that was ignited with a burning piece of rope. That was not very reliable. The wheel lock came into being, even though it was very complicated to produce and very expensive. Those are not the types of guns that average people would probably have much of an opportunity to afford. The wheel lock was more reliable than the match, but all of that was eventually replaced by a rifle we'll shoot later on called a Flintlock. And what I'm trying to demonstrate is that Flintlocks were not around when the Pilgrims came, but hopefully you'll get a better and more of a respect for how difficult it was for those people to survive here at all, let alone without Indian help. John Alden's landed in America. The first winter, as we know, was extremely difficult. 45 of the 102 Pilgrims died of exposure, disease, and starvation. One of the reasons why they lived was Native American help from a guy named Squanto. What I really love about Squanto is that's not his name. He's known to history as Squanto, but his real name was Tisquantum. And as it turned out, that poor guy had actually been taken prisoner by another English sea captain named Thomas Hunt, who took him and 19 others back to England, presumably as slaves for sale. It's not very clear what happened to the rest of the 19 of them, but while he was in Europe, he actually learned to speak English, got a ride on a boat back, and had an amazing enough life to actually help the occupants of the Mayflower survive the first winter, sort of as a Native American liaison. 45 of the 102 colonists died that first winter. John Alden's wife, who he married shortly after arriving, a woman named Priscilla Mullins, most of her family died. It was a terrible situation, but driven largely by the fact the colonists just weren't prepared. In fact, what little people don't know is November, of course. They arrived here in mid-November, completely unprepared for the conditions they would be expected to survive in. So in 1621, the fall harvest came, and they had a dinner to celebrate their good fortune of surviving the first year, and it's one of the reasons why we have Thanksgiving in November. But back to the Mayflower gun. Wonderful story. It exists to this day because the Alden family built the house sometime around 1650 or so, and believe it or not, the house is still there. You can visit it as a historical landmark. And what's really, really an amazing twist to this story is, in 1924, hidden in a cubby close to the front door was the Mayflower gun. completely intact and still loaded, believe it or not. The gun had been repaired through the years. You can see where there was English walnut that had been replaced by some American to repair the stock, and the gun had been fired so much it began its life as a 50 caliber weapon and now would require a 66 caliber ball to actually fit into the tube. So the gun saw a lot of use. In conclusion, what I'd like to tell you is we're going to go shoot some of these guns. We're going to try to demonstrate how difficult it all is and hopefully have a better understanding of what those guys went through, gals as well. And let's go shoot some guns. All right, so as we said, we're going to shoot a fairly primitive rifle, but not near as primitive as the Pilgrims would have had. What I have here is a borrowed Flintlock from our good friend Josh, and this is a 32 caliber weapon. Most of them were a little larger. The Pilgrims would have been as much as sometimes 75 caliber, believe that or not. And they did have a different locking mechanism here, but the basic concept is the same in that we're going to pour some powder down the tube, run a patch down, set our ball, make sure there's no space between the powder charge in the ball and the actual chamber, and see if we can't hit something downrange, which in this case will be our pumpkin roughly 30 yards away. This being a smaller weapon, it will only require 15 grains of powder. I've taken the liberty of pre-measuring the charge just to save time, and you can see there's the powder there, and she'll go right down the tube. And as I do this, I would like for everybody at home to keep in mind right now, if I'm John Alden, it's a good bet I'm either dodging arrows, wild animals, or tonight's dinner just escaped while I'm messing around with all of this. This was an extremely difficult process, and with the type of weapons that they had, getting off one shot every minute and a half or two was considered to be an excellent rifleman by military standards of the time. It took a long time. Probably would have been better off with a bow and arrow unless you had dozens and dozens of these in a volley. Also, safety tip for those at home, while you're messing around with black powder, be very, very careful that it stays separate. It's another reason why we don't have a lot of it laying around, and any spark will set it off, so you do have to be very careful. What I'm going to do is get my patch started, and I have my ball. When they cast the ball, it has a sort of a burr or a flat spot on it. And we'll just get him started here. And this is my ball starter, designed to not damage the ramrod, which can be pretty delicate. As you'll see, it's a little bit wood. Got him started there. And before we go any further, put on some eye protection. What I need to do is make sure that the patch and the ball are firmly seated with my handy dandy little ramrod. And as my good buddy Josh was informing me, want to make sure when you first get started that you don't pull down up here, because you'll snap the rod fairly easily. A little bit of knowledge base with this thing goes a long way. We'll make sure we got her good and tamped down. All right. And we always want to replace the ramrod because we don't want to shoot it out the end of the gun and thereby can't reload. Now we get into the tricky part of this operation, is actually loading the pan. This is called the pan, and of course this piece here is called the frizzen, and of course here's your lock. So it does not require a tremendous amount of powder to set all of this off. However, you do have to kind of do it a certain way, and of course I have the luxury of using this table right here. And what we're going to do is shake a little bit out into the pan, and it's very important that we leave some airspace between the powder and the actual flash hole. Okay, and then I'll close the pan. This has a double set trigger only. As you can tell, our pumpkin's down the way there. I'm going to bring the gun to full lock. Once it's in the shoulder, I'm going to set the trigger, which hopefully you could hear that click, and then when I get aimed in good on the pumpkin, presto bingo, and it looks like we have a hit. And I don't know about you, but that's just Pilgrim cool. This thing is awesome. I love this type of shooting. It's a lost art, and it truly is an art. Well, you can't have Thanksgiving till somebody shoots a turkey. Dead turkey. I want to go see the hole. So this is the impact hole And I don't want to change my setup because I'm going to shoot the turkey with some more weapons, but definitely would go all the way through the turkey, and I absolutely heard it hit the log on the other side. So now let's move on to some more modern stuff. All right, guys, what we're going to do next is go on a little bit of a turkey hunt. I shot it first with a Flintlock rifle, and then we're going to shoot it with some number 6 birdshot, followed by some buckshot. Normally, when you're hunting turkeys, you're going to aim at the head because it's going to be the easiest thing to get, and the plumage doesn't get in your way and potentially deflect some of your shot. But you'll see very apparently why it is you don't want to hunt turkeys with buckshot. Number 6 shot at the gobbler. I think I got him. Oh, that never gets old. So as you can see, yeah, all kinds of pellet impact. Definitely center mass of the target, and woof, is he down. So this will be buckshot at the Tom double-op buck, hopefully keeping it away from our GoPro camera. Killed a log too. Oh my, that is ferocious. Hope you like a little lead with your turkey. Thanks for coming on this turkey hunt with us, or at least our version of it. Enjoy your family and your friends, and of course your firearms this Thanksgiving season, but be safe, and thanks for joining us.